So the Terrifier franchise, super popular franchise right now. Terrifier 3 was a huge hit in theaters in 2024, like one of the bigger horror theater releases of that year. And I'm just getting around to watching them. Well, kind of. So I watched the first Terrifier movie back when it came out, and I remember at the time like mostly liking it. I remember liking the gore and how scary Art the Clown was. All of the things I think people still like about the franchise, question mark. On subsequent watches, I've not enjoyed the movie as much anymore. It's been a shift that's like just slowly been happening since I've had this channel. I've been doing this for 10 years, so tastes have kind of changed a little bit. And I'm also just more vocal about my opinions and not afraid to share my full opinions anymore. I've talked about this before on this channel, but like back when I first started doing this, like the further back you go, it's not like I lied in movie reviews, but if I perceived that the horror community, especially like back then when I was thinking it was still like mostly toxic men in the fandom, like if I perceived that they liked something, I would just focus my review on like everything I found positive about it. But obviously the longer I've been doing this, I've grown my community and found my people, so to speak, and delightfully found that the people coming to watch my videos are not toxic men. And this is important context, I promise, because my perception going in was like, I might be a little bit critical about this franchise, but like that first review I did, which was like 8 years ago, by the way, definitely not the same person it was 8 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago. I was kind of going in with this like perception shift already. And I think it has been a few years since my previous rewatch of Terrifier. I only just like got my shit together on Letterboxd a year ago. Like I used to be so bad at remembering to log stuff, especially rewatches. But I think it had still been a few years since I had seen the first Terrifier, and I just completely didn't watch the second one when it came out. So when I went in to rewatch the first one, like at first I was kind of bored with this movie, which I was surprised by, but I didn't know that my opinion of the first movie would kind of find like a middle ground after watching the second and third film. Watching those two was important for me to, I think, fully form my opinion on the first movie, finally. The first one, and all of them really, just seem like gore for gore's sake. And I mean, I don't mind that in the first movie. Most of Art's victims kind of just seem like random targets. I don't know if random's the right word, but it's just more like whoever he just happens to encounter. Like, if you get in his way, you're gonna die, that kind of vibe. But it's like when he catches you, he kills you right away, pretty much. A big exception in this movie is what I've seen called the vagina kill in a couple of Letterboxd reviews, and I hate that name, by the way, but I feel like when I say that, you guys know which kill from the first movie I'm talking about. But if you don't realize it or you haven't seen it, it just involves a naked woman being tied up by her feet, hung upside down, and being sliced in half, starting, you know, starting from there. This kill just feels extra for no reason. Like, none of the other kills are set up in this way. None of them have this big elaborate setup, and it just feels like extra brutal, which is crazy when you think about all the kills in this franchise. It just feels extra brutal. The fact that she has to be naked also. Art makes a point of like ripping off her underwear before starting to saw her in half. It just feels extra mean and really unnecessary, actually. I really hate that moment. I like super duper hate that moment, but the rest of the movie I actually prefer in comparison to 2 and 3. I found in watching those two movies, I would actually appreciate the simplicity of the first movie for the most part. So Terrifier 2 and 3 I watched for the very first time for this video, and I'm gonna kind of talk about them together because they follow the same storyline with this final girl, Sienna. So these two movies together are trying to give Art the Clown a little bit of backstory, a little bit of like who, what, when, where, and why. And I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna pull a Halloween franchise fan move when I say I think what makes Art the Clown so scary is not knowing his motives, not knowing that much about him. And just in my opinion, Terrifier 2 and 3 kind of ruined Art the Clown for me a little bit, because what the heck is going on with his backstory? It's so weird. And it felt like they were kind of just trying to throw whatever at the wall to see what would stick. So in the second one, there's a lot of focus on Sienna's late father, who apparently had an obsession with Art the Clown and the murders from the first movie before he died of a brain tumor. And that kind of evolves in the third movie to Sienna potentially being like a carrier to be possessed by, I don't even know if it's like possessed by Art the Clown or possessed by like some energy that I think, someone will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, this energy takes the form of that mini-me Art the Clown in Terrifier 2 and then the Vicky character in Terrifier 3. It's so bizarre, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know if I'm explaining it correctly. I don't even know if I understood it. I'm just explaining it to you like how I perceived the story to go, and I intentionally did not try and look it up or read anything about it because I feel like that's important. Like, I'm trying to explain it given what I've seen in the movie, and it's really convoluted and complicated for what reason. And it really just felt weird that they were trying to cram so much like meaning and backstory into this just in the second and third movie. Like, I get it that you never know like what movie is gonna be your last, right? Like Terrifier 2 could have flopped real hard. The first Terrifier could have flopped really hard, and they never would have had the chance to make 2 or 3 possibly. But it just feels like a really bizarre and complicated storyline just so early in the franchise. I feel like all of the like the big slasher franchises don't even start to get that weird until at least 4 or 5. And I personally wouldn't even care as much if the whole like convoluted backstory didn't lead to just some really long scenes that I just wished would have ended a lot sooner than they did. Like, for example, in the third movie, towards the end, Vicky goes on this huge monologue, what seems like a huge monologue about Sienna being a candidate for being possessed or being a vessel or whatever she calls it. And this is at the climax of the movie. This is like the big confrontation. So, and like, I'm like tapping my feet and checking my watch, like, come on, what are we doing here? I really felt the 2-hour runtime for both movies. Many of the scenes just felt like they were going on too long for no reason. Like, we could have just trimmed and cleaned up some scenes, and it wasn't always like important scenes that were going on for a long time. And I don't know if this is correct either, because I'm kind of just giving you my raw reactions to it, but some of the like just like the regular dialogue scenes almost felt like they were improv'd, and I don't know if they were or not. There just seemed to be like weird pauses between characters talking, or again, like the conversation would just run on a little bit longer than it needed to, and it's just like, just trim it up. A similar thing happens at the climax of the second film. Sienna like goes down and gets back up heroically like a bajillion times, just to drive home the idea that she's embodying this character that her father made for her when she was a kid. And I'm gonna be that person and talk about it because I thought it was a smidgen weird in the second one, because the character is so scantily clad, but very like typical kind of scantily clad woman superhero from like comic book kind of vibes. We get a little bit of a flashback in the third one with Sienna being like a literal child, and her dad showing her this drawing of this big boobied superhero, and it's supposed to be this sweet moment. It's just something about like drawing this very adult woman and presenting it to your child like, I drew this for you, and it gave me the ick. It just gave me the ick. I was like, this is not sweet, this is weird. Each one of these movies so far had a moment like that where it was just like, it just went too far into the misogynistic side, where it made me feel gross. The first one was obviously that kill. The second one for me is the character that was made for her when she was a kid, and it's weird. And there's also a kill in the second movie that just felt ultra brutal against a female character for no reason, which seems crazy to talk about when we're talking about Art the Clown, because all of his kills are super brutal. But it's when Art is killing one of Sienna's friends, I can't remember her name, He goes to her house and trick-or-treats earlier, and then he comes back. I don't know why, but that kill went on for so long. And it starts off like just super violent again. She's meant to be a high schooler, and she's running around in her bra and panties. Art throws her on the bed and jumps on top of her. Just feels icky. And then he goes on like, you know, brutally killing her. The part that just feels like over the top is that we keep cutting back to her. Like it cuts away, it goes, we see some other scene happening. And then we come back and somehow this girl is still alive. She's been like scalped, her face has been ripped off. He literally like rips one of her arms off, and we just keep cutting back and she's still alive and even more brutalized. And it just feels like, I'm just like, why? Like in a movie of over the top kills, I feel like if there's a particular one that stands out for being over the top, to me that's weird. In the third one, there's that bizarro scene with Vicky masturbating with a piece of glass to the scene of Art killing somebody. And before anyone starts trying to yell at me in the comments, I'm not suggesting that Damien Leone is intentionally writing these scenes to be misogynistic. I think it's more a case of him writing these scenes or anybody else writing these scenes were not thinking about that because they're men. So why would they think about that? And my overall vibe after watching 2 and 3, and maybe it's because I watched them all back to back, that's very possible, I was so desensitized by the gore and the violence by the end of these movies. I feel like the kills and the gore become way less shocking when you've already had like a 10-minute kill at the beginning of the movie. So then I'm sitting there like wondering like what we're doing here with these movies. Like what's the purpose? Am I supposed to care about these stories because it seems really convoluted and they're trying to shove so much into it? Am I supposed to care about the kills because I just watched 2 people get brutally killed for so long, like the scenes would not end, and now we're gonna watch it like 4 or 5 more times? Like I like by the end of the movies I'm just like glazed eyes. Like I'm like, and I know horror fans like to brag about that sometimes, being desensitized to scary things or violence. I personally don't like that feeling. I watch these kinds of movies because it freaks me out, because it makes me feel some sort of way, and I don't particularly like feeling super desensitized to violence like that. I don't think that should be the aim of watching horror movies personally. But I was just exhausted watching these 2 movies. It's just way too much, way too much. So it's not like I've been sugarcoating it for the past however many minutes this video has gone on, but I did not enjoy watching Terrifier 2 or 3. I didn't have a good time. The only interesting development was my apparent appreciation for the simplicity of the first one compared to 2 and 3. All right, editor Vicky here, because there has been a slight update, which I think is kind of relevant to me talking about the Terrifier franchise. And I filmed this video like last week, so this was before this was posted by Damien Leone. But this was posted yesterday on his Facebook and his Twitter, and I saw it circulating and I was like, ooh, interesting. I kind of want to add this into the video, so I'm gonna show on the screen and read what he wrote, seemingly unprompted. I want to make a very important statement regarding the Terrifier franchise in this ugly political climate we're living in. As most of you know, some of my cast and crew members have a very passionate political presence on social media with extreme and sometimes harsh opinions, which is their right. I'm all for freedom of speech and expression. That being said, Terrifier is not in any way, shape, or form a political franchise. I did not get into filmmaking to become a politician or promote any political agendas or ideologies, especially through a killer clown movie. I fell in love with horror movies as a form of pure entertainment, and those are the films I like to make. Since Terrifier 1, our cast and crew has and still consists of both Republicans and Democrats, and anyone is welcome to be a part of it regardless of their political affiliations, as long as they're a decent human being. That goes for our fan base as well. If this doesn't sit well with any fans or cast/crew members, that is your right and I respect it. You don't have to buy a ticket and you don't have to work on these films. Thank you, and I recommend you don't let toxic rhetoric on either side of the political spectrum deter you from being a Terrifier fan. So, yeah, immediately, very much regret watching 2 and 3 now. I definitely did, because I did not enjoy them, but I regret it now, and I won't be watching any more Terrifier movies. This is really disappointing, honestly. And I'm gonna be like really frank. This is a stupid take. The exact sentence, I did not get into filmmaking to become a politician or promote any political agendas or ideologies, especially through a killer clown movie. That particular sentence is the most confounding to me, only because it clearly ignores an entire filmmaking history, not just of the horror genre, definitely of the horror genre, but just filmmaking in general, just art in general. Clearly, this man doesn't know anything about interacting with art or how fans interact with something like a movie, like Terrifier. I've said it a million times, and I feel like I'm gonna get it chiseled on my tombstone eventually, that when it comes to movies, when it comes to any art form really, like, just know that everything I'm saying, I'm gonna talk specifically about horror movies and about Terrifier because this is what this video is about. But this applies to like any art form that is made for public consumption. So this applies. But director intent matters. It also doesn't matter. I know that's a weird kind of like amorphous area that kind of lives in, but it's true. Like, every filmmaker has an intent when going in and making a movie. Like, they have an intended message that they're trying to put into the movie. They have an intended outcome. They all, like, everybody does. Sometimes they share that intention, sometimes they intentionally don't. Audiences also have their own interpretation, which matters and doesn't matter. The two things can exist separately. Sometimes they overlap. A lot of times they overlap, but they can also exist separately. Like I said, I don't know at what point this is going to go into the video, maybe at the end. I know I said earlier in the video that I don't believe that Damien Leone's intention when making the scenes that I found to be gross and misogynistic, I don't think that was his intent. And as right now, I still will maintain that I don't think that was his intent. So if that's true, that intention from him is separate from my interpretation, and both are accurate and valid, because that's what consuming art is about. That's what making art is about. Everybody's going to bring their own life experiences, their own political ideologies, their own moral compass, whatever it is. They're going to bring that into the movie and maybe find meaning in the movie on a personal level based on, it could just be based on something you're going through at the moment. Like, how many movies can you think of off the top of your head that means something special to you because maybe you were going through a tough time when you saw the movie? Maybe you were going through a bad breakup, or maybe a loved one passed away, or whatever the case may be, and you you put this meaning on the movie. This movie had meaning for you because of what you were going through, because of what was happening in your life at the moment. My favorite thing in the whole entire world is when cis white men get up and preach about politics that, honestly, you're not in the fucking front line of fire with anything happening in this ugly political climate that we're living in. You are so far at the back. Like, there are so many other marginalized groups in front of you that are gonna bear the brunt of the next 4 years before you do. There was any respect I had for this man. It's not like, you know, when I watch these movies, I'm like, man, I really respect this guy. I don't disrespect him, but now I do. Even the goriest, most exploitative genre, like subgenre within horror, has a political history attached to it. Like video nasties, torture porn era, post 9/11. Like, they all have, like, there is a political history even to the type of movie you are making with Terrifier. And clearly you either don't know that or you don't have any respect for that. Because otherwise, why would you make this statement? Because it really doesn't fucking matter if Terrifier is intended to be a political movie. If anybody watches these movies and derives some sort of political meaning from them, that's on the audience, which you claim to say you respect their right to their opinions. Okay, that's all for that's it. That's a completely different end to this video than I anticipated, but so glad I saw this before I posted the video. So, all right, back to past me to end it out, I guess. Can't wait to see what the comments look like after I post this video. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. I will see you soon with another video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.